name is Carol Williams, and I'm with For Tomorrow, the City of Alabaster's Youth Drug Prevention Team. We're here today at Warrior Wellness Group, and we're going to be speaking with Cherie, Aisha, and Josh about a topic that we're all dealing with, and that's stress and anxiety. Working with young people here in our community, as well as with parents, we hear the words stress, we hear the words anxiety used a lot. But for mental health professionals here in our community, can you guys tell us, what is stress? What is anxiety? When we say those words, what are we really talking about?
So stress and anxiety, they are terms used to describe a physical reaction to things that happen in our lives. They can come from family, from school, from taking AP classes, death in the family, grief. Those are all ways that we would describe stress. Anxiety is our body's response to it. There's a lot of different factors that you can associate with anxiety. Panic attacks, increased heart rate, sweating, clammy hands. So there's a lot of different ways that anxiety presents itself. Anxiety is basically a response to stress.
Gotcha. So I've been reading a lot of studies recently, and they all point to the fact that our young people are dealing with more mental health issues. We're seeing more stress, we're seeing more anxiety, we're seeing more depression. Now that's nationally. Yes. What are we seeing here in our community with the young people that you work with?
In our community, it seems that we are really mirroring what is happening nationally. Here in the Alabaster community at Warrior Wellness, we service a lot of Shelby County, and I personally see a lot of teenagers, and most of them are here because of anxiety and also related depression. Anxiety and depression tend to work together, so we are seeing quite an increase in that. A lot of the children report anxiety due to increased pressures at school. Cherie mentioned AP classes before. The increased academics are amazing and wonderful, but a lot of our young people are really experiencing some stress with that, kind of feeling perfectionism coming on and really wanting to do their very best, and as a result becoming stressed. Social relationships being a major source of stress in the area for our young people.
Is that social relationships? Is that friendships? Is that maybe romantic relationships? Or is it kind of a mixture of just dealing with
all
social
of it.
Life together?
All of it. And, I don't want to say that social media is a blame, because there's some great points to social media for our young people, but I think all of those things tie in together to make it a really complicated issue for our young people today. It's very complicated being a teenager in this world today.
Absolutely. Something that we didn't deal with as we were growing up. Absolutely. And what our parents now of teenagers didn't have to deal with when they were growing up either.
Absolutely.
Cherie, you mentioned to me recently that we're seeing more issues around self-harm and suicidal ideations with some of the young people that you're working with. How does that tie into just depression, anxiety, stress? I mean, are those all working together to what you're seeing with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So self-harm, I think, is also just a symptom of stress and anxiety and inability to cope. We see a lot of decreased coping skills. That's what we do here. When kids come in, adolescents come in, and they are stressed and they're anxious, we immediately start working on coping skills. A lot of the media, the movie, I know the 13 Reasons Why series, a lot of people like to blame it for the increased self-harm, suicidal ideation. It's a lot more than that. Our kids are dealing with, once again, social issues, family issues. The divorce rate is higher. We've got a lot of broken homes. We also have a lot of gender identity issues. We have a lot of sexuality issues that we see. I don't know if it's increased. I don't think they were doing statistics on it back in the day, but I do know that the levels are extremely high. That population specifically does have an increased risk for suicidal ideation.
And I think children today and teens today are really struggling to identify. I think that goes to what Cherie was just speaking of, and figuring out where they fit in, and that produces a significant amount of this stress. And coping is definitely what we work on the most. Emotional intelligence, learning how to identify what am I feeling, putting a name to it, so that they know how to communicate these feelings to those people that are around them that can be support for them.
Absolutely. So I would say probably one of our big supports that we need to talk about are parents.
Yes.
So when we talk about our parents, and we're going to have a lot of parents who are watching this video today, what do parents need to do? What do they need to be aware of? What are some signs that they need to be mindful of? Let's talk about parents and how they can help.
So any good parent hates seeing their kids struggle, and we want to do stuff. Any good parent wants to be able to help. Oftentimes it's not a matter if they want to help, they just don't know how to help. They don't know what to do or where to go, and it sometimes is explained away as, oh, well, they're just in puberty, or it's just there's a lot going on, and that can explain some. But I think what parents need to look for, if I had to narrow it down to just one word that I see a lot in my sessions, it's this idea of imbalance that causes so much anxiety and stress in our young people. And oftentimes that is self-inflicted, where we just put so much pressures on ourselves, and it's just giving too much energy and time into one specific thing, and that creates imbalance. Parents also sometimes can be the culprit of this. Just academically, I need you to perform. Athletically, I need you to do that. And it's just this massive amount of pressure. And I think if we can tip those scales a little bit more and have some good communications with our kids, I think we can create a little bit more balance, which reduces, in my opinion, stress and anxiety.
That's fantastic. And we touched on that to begin with, just the pressures that our young people are facing. So let's say I'm mom or dad and I'm at home and I am seeing things. Whether it could be maybe there are some changes in grades, or maybe my child doesn't want to be in the sports team anymore. For you guys as professionals, at what point does a parent need to be concerned? What are some key indicators where they may need to reach out and speak to somebody to get a little further help?
I think that can be a tough question, because a lot of the answer to your question is intuition. Us as therapists can't teach intuition. We can teach coping skills, we can teach warning signs, but we can't teach a mother's intuition or a father's intuition. You know your kid better than anybody else. Go with your gut instincts. One of the things that I always encourage parents to do is have open communication. And that's oftentimes not rescuing, but it's almost what I call creating this just environment of grace. Being able to just listen. And that helps a multitude of things. The other things is parents often, as kids get older, their boundaries get less. Well, what we see is with less boundaries, it creates more anxiety. This world's really hard to navigate. And for a young person to navigate some of the decisions that adult makes is incredibly difficult. Well, what ends up happening is their anxiety level just skyrockets because they're not equipped or developmentally appropriate to be able to answer some of the things that life throws at them. And what boundaries do, it actually reiterates safety, security, and love, and it allows them to be confident and competent in making good decisions for themselves. And then a simplistic way I think that a parent can help is help your child manage their time. Help them schedule. And in that schedule, create self-care for the child as well. And I think above everything else, if I had to give one takeaway for a parent, it's just be intentional. It's hard to mess a kid up when you're intentional. Just love them and be intentional. But your intuition, if you think that this is above something of your scope of reference, then get them to therapy, get them to help. And you know that old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I think that's true. So incorporate other people in your village to whenever you're not equipped to do it, just so they can still get the help that they need.
And we also run into the fact that parents, when he says parents need to be intentional, the struggle that we have with that is that we also have a lot of parents struggling with stress and anxiety, struggling with mental health issues. So the biggest component, being intentional obviously, but also is self-care. Taking care of yourself, making sure that you're meeting your needs, making sure you're functioning from a healthy mindset, you can't help anybody else if you can't help yourself. So you make sure your spiritual life is where it needs to be. Make sure your emotional life, your psychological life, social life. If you're isolating and the only thing you guys do as a family is sit at home and watch movies, your kids are wanting to go out, get them a part of the public, get them into public events.
Yeah.
And I think connectedness, Josh mentioned kind of having that openness and that allowing your children to come to you and communicate honestly. I hear a number of times, well, I've mentioned it to mom and dad, but they didn't think I was serious, or they didn't. If your child comes to you and says, this is a problem and I am struggling, that is their cry for help. That is them reaching out, and we should take it seriously.
Absolutely. We working in prevention, substance use prevention, we preach a lot of the same to our parents. It can't be a one-time conversation. It has to be a regular conversation. You have to build that environment of and comfort so your child knows they can say, I need help, or that they're struggling with something.
Absolutely.
Do you guys have any other information that you would like to share for our parents who'll be watching?
One statistic that I find striking as I've done, my work and research in this is that 80% of the young people who are struggling with anxiety and depression are undiagnosed, meaning they're struggling in silence. They're trying to figure it out on their own, and they need help. So, as you said, having that continued conversation, checking in with your kid on a daily basis of what's going on, what's some positive things, what's some negative things, where are the struggles, so that you as the parent can identify how you can help them manage that.
I think it's important too that parents don't always rescue. We want to do that as parents. It's our go-to, right? We just want to rescue our kids because we don't want them to hurt. But there's something to be said about the struggle. And a lot of times it's not rescuing as parents. We just need to pace, create that environment of grace, walk alongside, get the help that they need, but give them autonomy, let them figure some of this out. And through that, you get a lot stronger individual at the backside of that. So
Resilience is built.
Resilience.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of valuable information that we've learned. If you would like to receive more information, please visit one of the websites below to get additional resources. And thank you for joining us with For Tomorrow.